Welcome in, everybody, to the Please Stay Inside podcast. My name is Rob. This is episode number 10. Very important day. We've hit double digits. We are joined today by Fay. Fay is a TikTok/YouTube content creator. You can find her at BOZETTEXX, both on TikTok as well as YouTube. She left a Jewish Hasidic cult and uses her platform to, among other things, discuss the difference between a religion and a cult. Fay, welcome on.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. We're very excited to have you. So tell us a bit about your platform, a bit about what it is that you talk about.
So at the beginning, when I created this platform, the first video that I posted, I thought I had posted it to be private. I just needed a place. The way I work through things is by venting out loud. And I had done this throughout my entire childhood and journey, where I had made videos just for myself and never posted them anywhere. And then as soon as I saw TikTok, I'm like, perfect, I will create videos on here and just post them for myself. I was shocked when people found it and were relating to it, and it kind of opened a whole new world. And I guess in TikTok, you can always find your niche. And I was shocked at how many people had left similar type of environments and how many people were interested in the kind of situation that I left.
So you were making these videos kind of for yourself to process through some things, and as you were doing that, you realized that other people were starting to see these videos as well.
Yeah, and as other people started to see this, it actually gave me a lot of confidence, and it helped me realize that a lot of people are going through it as well. It wasn't just me going through it. And while it did first put a stumbling block in my way, because as soon as it started blowing up, and I think pretty much within the first week, I hit I think it was 5,000 followers within the first week or month.
Wow.
And it just kind of hit me. And then it brought me to a place where I was nervous about the people within the cult, within the community, finding my channel and seeing it, and how that would affect my family that was still in there. Especially, I do have a younger sister that is in there, and she is one of the reasons where I often think about going back. But I realized after speaking to a lot of people that it is actually more helpful for me to continue doing these videos, so that when she gets older, because I'm currently not allowed to have contact with her, when she gets older, she will kind of see the progression of me trying to gain contact with her and what this process of leaving was like, so she doesn't think it was just an overnight decision, because it's been 7 years and it's still something I struggle with.
Your process then, so one of the things that you're attempting to do is you're trying to demonstrate what your process is looking like, right? So that, if your sister finds it, she's able to kind of see that process.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to be transparent, although it is kind of hard to be fully transparent with this process, because I have found that when I do mention past trauma or things that have gone on in my family, most people use that to invalidate the trauma that the community puts onto everybody within the community, and they tend to focus on the fact that, oh, you left because of your family, when there are many things that the community did that were also controlling and abusive. Like within school, many of our books were blacked out. A lot of the information in the books were blacked out. And there was also these concepts of not trusting anyone that wasn't within the community. So these were stuff that were harmful on a community level, not just the familial level. So it is kind of hard to tread that line and figure out what to talk about. Now that the fact that more and more people are finding my content, it's kind of difficult to figure out what I can talk about while still having people validate the fact that it was the community, that something needs to change throughout the entire community, not just in my family. It wasn't just a family thing.
So I guess from your perspective, what is it that people usually get hung up on, like when they're defending the community and kind of saying, well, but no, maybe it was just your family?
So a lot of people get hung up on the whole anti-Semitism and believing that when you criticize, because Jewish people are such a small percentage of the entire population, as soon as, and most Jewish communities are extremely secluded, so you only hear about them in the news when something happens. So the fact that I am talking about stuff that need to change within the community and difficult stuff within the community, people see that as me spreading anti-Semitism, and the fact that I am not keeping it within the community is something they really have an issue with. However, I think it's important to educate people on the fact that every religion has communities that function as cults. Like within Christianity, there's Mormons, there's Mennonites, there's Jehovah's Witnesses. Those communities function as cults. And within Judaism, Hasidic groups function as cults. That does not mean that Judaism is a cult. That's just a religion that cult is under.
And one of the things that you do with your page is you try to talk about the difference between a religion and a cult. So I guess if we could, in an attempt to bring some clarity, to simplify it a little bit, I guess what do you see as being like the difference between a cult and a religion?
So there is a lot. That can be a long answer if we go into, the BITE model and meeting the criteria of a cult. However, I think the biggest thing is the control aspect and the fact that when you leave a religion, if somebody just, let's say, in regular Christianity, I like to compare it to Christianity because I feel like it's more mainstream and more people understand it. But if somebody stops going to church or stops being religious, chances are they will still be able to live in the same community, live in the same neighborhood, still have a relationship with most of their family, keep the same friends, keep the same job. However, when I left, I was, my mom kicked me out. I got 48 hours to move out. I lost all of my friends besides for one, all of my family besides for my older sister, who ended up leaving a couple of years later as well. But I lost everything pretty much overnight. And I think that is one of the biggest indicators when you're afraid that you're going to lose everything. That is probably a huge indicator of the fact that you're in a cult. And one more aspect that I do like to bring up is the fact that there are a lot of times where I talk about rules that they had within the cult. However, these rules are not what makes it a cult, because other groups within Judaism still follow these rules. It's the fact that within the group that I grew up in, we were taught that if you don't do these rules, something bad will happen. Like, for one example, the order we cut our fingernails in, there's a lot of rules when you cut your nails. You can't cut your fingernails and toenails on the same day. And when you're cutting your nails, you have to cut fingers 1, 3, 5, and then 2 and 4. And then you either have to burn, flush, or bury the fingernails. And the reason why you do this is because when they're preparing a dead body, they cut the nails in order. And we were told, other groups are told, like, oh, this is a nice thing, this is why we do it. And it's kind of left as an option, as opposed to within the group that I grew up in, we were told, if you don't cut your nails in this way, God will unalive you and bring your death faster because you're cutting it as it's cut on a dead person. So it's very much putting the fear in you if you don't follow the rules exactly the way they want you to.
I'm curious because I mean it's all of this. I imagine if I was younger, you know, I'm born into this community, into this cult, and this is all that I know. I mean, these sound very like that even just that one example sounds incredibly terrifying to have to hear as a kid.
Right. I think we kind of just took it as is. I mean, if you think about it, not many, there were a few teachers that we had that were Holocaust survivors, that had gone through this terrible thing. And I mean, my first grade teacher was, so I knew about the Holocaust, and she would discuss dodging bullets as dodging watermelons, and we would like play a game where she would act it out for us. So we were kind of exposed to these things at a young age. And one thing that was really instilled in us, which kind of, I feel like many cult-like communities do this, where they teach you to fear the outside world and the only safety is within the community. So we were taught this at a very young age, that the entire world is out to get us, and the only way we can stay safe and alive is by staying within the community and not trusting anyone on the outside.
How does that impact your interactions with people who are not a part of the cult?
Today or back then?
I guess back then.
So back then, I would not have conversations with anyone that was not in the cult. Besides for my mom did own a restaurant, and we did have employees that were on the outside, but it was very surface level with all of them, our interactions. However, when I moved out, I was given 48 hours to move out by my mom, and I found an apartment with 2 roommates. At first, I did not want to tell them the way I grew up because I was terrified they would want to unalive me. I guess I have to be careful with TikTok, but that they would want to unalive me. And at some point, my mom decided to drop off cooked kosher chicken, because kosher food has to be cooked in a kosher oven. So she dropped off cooked kosher chicken when she knew I was at work, and then she just left it on my doorsteps, and cats came and ate it and stuff like that. And my roommates were kind of frustrated. So I had to explain to them why she did that, because she was trying to get me to eat kosher food. And then I explained to them that I had grown up Jewish, and they were just so open to it, so open to learning, and so open to teaching me about the things that I didn't know, because I was very naive. I had grown up very insulated, and there was a lot I didn't know about the outside world.
Wow.
So they definitely helped me, and it took a lot of unlearning to realize that not everybody is out to get me. Somebody is saying so far, while you're getting the mic,
Sure.
that they were part of a cult as well, and they didn't think it was as intense as the group I left, but the process of leaving was just as difficult. And I think that's very much throughout all cults, where the process of leaving is the most difficult, because you realize that you no longer have value as a human being. You only had value while you were in the community and while you were a part of the cult. But as soon as you can no longer contribute to that, and you're no longer a part of that, you no longer have value as a human being, and they don't care whether you live or die.
So this experience, so how old were you when you moved in with these roommates?
I was 19. So one of the roommates was in her 60s and the other was 32. So they were very much understanding, and they had the patience, and I'm so grateful for them. They had the patience to educate me. And when I said something ignorant or hateful, and these were stuff that were so ingrained in me that I wouldn't even think about it, they would educate me and teach me and tell me why what I said wasn't okay. And I did a lot of unlearning while I was living there. And then after on my own, I also had to spend a lot of time unlearning everything else.
Out of curiosity, I do apologize if you already mentioned this. How is it that you had ended up moving out at 19 into the place with these roommates?
So, so actually when I was 16, I went out and I bought an iPod Touch. I did not have access to the internet, so it's a bit complicated. I guess I can go into it. When I was younger, we did not have access to the internet at all. Our parents weren't allowed to have access unless it was for business purposes. And when I was in the 6th grade, my parents actually got divorced, and the school, which was really unheard of within the group, so the school wanted to kick me out of this school in 6th grade when my parents got divorced. My mom begged our principal and my principal, and she allowed me to graduate. However, they told me I would not be accepted into any school within the community and within the neighborhood. So we actually moved from Brooklyn to Queens, and I went to an Orthodox high school. In the Orthodox high school, I was shocked because one day it was kind of a necessity to have internet to learn some things. But in my household, because we were not used to having internet, my mom had downloaded this filter that sent her this program that called eBlaster. It sent her an email every 30 minutes of exactly what went on the computer. Like if I was writing a Microsoft Word document, she would get the entire, every keystroke on the email. So it was very limited access to the internet, but it was some access to the internet, and I was being educated for the first time about real world stuff. So at 16, I snuck out and bought an iPod Touch where I had unfiltered access to the internet. And that's when I started researching things. And that's when I realized how many religions, how many belief systems there are in the world. And I couldn't imagine how anyone can pick one and say, this is right, everything else is wrong. To me, there just isn't enough evidence for that. So at some point during that year, she caught me with the iPod Touch, and I told her that I wanted to leave, but I wanted to maintain a relationship with her. So she first tried the whole crying thing, and then she told me that she would maintain a relationship with me if I did a number of things, which was as long as I was under her house, I had to follow her rules. Finish out high school in the Orthodox high school, go to Israel for a year and study in a seminary of her choosing out for a year after high school. And then when I got back, I had to get a job at a Jewish workplace. So I did all of that. And when I came back at 19, I got a job at a Jewish workplace, and I was getting ready to move out. And she decided to buy a used car because she was nervous. As soon as I would move out, she knew that I would stop following her rules. So as soon as I decided I wanted to move out, she went and bought a used car and decided to give it to me, which I was super excited about. And the deal was that I would stay in her house as long as I had the used car. And so I used all of the money in the car that I had set away for rent to put in the car instead, because it was a really old car. It needed a lot of stuff. And things were good for a couple of months. And a couple of months later, I was walking home from the gym. When we had made that deal about the car, I told her when I was outside of the house, I would do my own thing, but in her house, I would still follow her rules all the time. And a couple of months later, I was walking home from the gym wearing pants, and she was driving around the neighborhood, and she had never seen me wear pants before, and she gave me 48 hours to move out. So that's kind of how I ended up moving out. The plan was originally, because I had no money in the bank, was to just live on the street and take showers at Planet Fitness and then go to work. But thankfully, I don't know how I found this property manager who hadn't rented out this room that she was trying to rent out for a while. And she was willing to increase my rent at the beginning so I didn't have to pay my security deposit. And then she waived also the last month rent, which was awesome.
What a gift. Goodness.
Yeah. Sorry, let me just put the volume a bit higher. Sorry,
Sure.
What did you say?
It sounds like quite a gift. I mean, for that person to go to that extent.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. Like, the room apparently had been, now it was a tiny room. It was an illegal apartment in Brooklyn where they had taken the kitchen and divided it into a room and a kitchen. And like, the room was tiny. It only fit a twin size mattress and I had a box fan in it, but it was a room. So it had been empty for a while. So that's why I got such a good price on it. But I was super happy I didn't have to sleep on the streets.
Yeah. I mean, especially, it can get very, very cold out there up north. So how did you react, I guess, when you found out that you had this 48 hours?
I think I was in survival mode. I think I was in survival mode for the first couple of years after I left. I just knew I had to take care of stuff. So I was not focusing on any of it. I just found a place to live, and then I found 2 more jobs. So I was working 3 jobs in total. And I was just making sure I took care of things. And then when one of the jobs, so I did home therapy for a while for autistic children, and one of the families cut down their hours. So at that point, I was just kind of floundering because I needed that structure. I needed to have every minute of my day filled up in order to survive emotionally. So at that point, which I did for the next couple of years, I would find relationships and go into that, make that person my life, and find people that would give me that structure and tell me what to do, and just go with that for a good couple of years.
What do you feel like that pattern of busying yourself, going into these relationships, what do you feel like that protected you from?
I think it provided me that comfort and that safety where I was having someone tell me what to do and them giving me direction on how to gain affection, and them telling me what's okay to do and what's not okay to do. I think that was very important for me, and that was kind of what I craved. And so now this was only a realization I came to maybe a year ago. So this is the first time like I am intentionally single, because I would go from a 2-year relationship, have a week in between, and then head into another 2-year relationship. So this is the first time that I am intentionally single and staying single, because I don't want that pattern to keep repeating where I am relying on other people to give me that structure and to tell me what to do with my life.
You want to be able to find that internally?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And I imagine it's difficult to break that cycle and break that repetitive pattern to be able to try something so different. I mean, that's a really brave route to go with things.
Oh, thank you. It's taken a lot of therapy and stuff. So I did not start to work on myself really until 2 years ago. After COVID hit, I was hiking and I got bit by a tick and I got Lyme disease, but I didn't know that. It displayed as depression and anxiety. So my mind went to, okay, things are finally stable in my life. This is all my childhood stuff coming in. Let me deal with that. And when I started dealing with that, which was great, but I didn't realize it was antibiotics that I needed to actually solve the issue. But I think that's when I started to realize all of these things, these patterns that I was in, and these unhealthy coping skills that I had been using to survive for so long.
Okay, I hear you. So I guess, I mean, it's quite a way to come to therapy, getting Lyme disease and finding your way into it. So kind of going back to, so one thing, I am getting a lot of feedback. If you're able to distance one of them from the other.
It might be because, so one is on complete silent. So it might be because this one is resting on my laptop. So I'm just going to move it to some tissues.
Cool.
And see if that helps. Terrible angle, but is that helping?
Yes, that helps a lot. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
So returning back to this moment when you're 16, so were there any indications, I guess, before you had this access to the internet that maybe things were, that something was up, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it?
So not really. I'm going to move you back here. Hopefully it won't. Let me know if you still hear that feedback. But not really. There were things that I would do that was extremely not allowed. Like, so me and my sister, we were young. I was maybe 11, 12 years old. There was a hardware store around the block from me, and so there was a DVD store around the block from me that ran their credit cards through the hardware store that was next door to them. And my sister and I would take my mom's credit card and go buy these Hannah Montana DVDs and Mary Kate and Ashley DVDs. And put it on her credit card, which showed up as the hardware store. Go home, watch it in secret, and then crack up the DVDs and put the pieces in different garbage cans when we're done watching them. Like, there was small stuff like that, which we would do, which kind of, because I did have some interaction with the fact that my mom owned a restaurant and we had some non-Jewish interactions with non-Jewish people, it did kind of strike me as strange, but not really. I just saw it as like me being this terrible child who was going to hell for it. But I mean, who can resist Hannah Montana? So
right. Absolutely, man. So you got the DVDs, all that stuff, and the way that you covered it up is so genius. And it's one of the things that I see a lot with kids who have very, that come from very strict families, is they are very creative and very smart in the way that they continue to allow themselves to survive and to be able to function in these ways. I guess, were there other things that you were doing that were kind of like rebellious, things you were trying to do?
Yeah, so we would also, like, there were small stuff. So once I had realized that I wanted to leave, before I had decided that I wanted to leave, there wasn't really much I was doing. There was one more thing that I did. I took my iPod and I gave it to a neighbor who was religious, but he had gotten access to his father's computer that had iTunes and had some non-Jewish music on it. So I gave him my iPod and he downloaded some non-Jewish music. So I would listen to that sometimes in my headphones. But when I had decided to leave, I did some stuff like purposely. My rebelling was kind of in ways where I was waiting for the lightning to strike down. So on the Sabbath, you're not allowed to rip anything at all because that's considered work. So I went to the bathroom and sat down, like shut the toilet seat, sat down, and took a piece of toilet paper and ripped it in half, and just like was waiting there for like a good 15 minutes for that lightning to just strike down. And I was shocked when nothing happened. And another thing I did was I went on a bus for like an hour. And sorry, let me just back up.
Sure.
Part of our clothing stuff that we had to wear, we had to cover our elbows. So I put on a short sleeve, kind of like this, and wore a sweater on top of it. Went on the bus for about an hour. So I was out of the neighborhood where no one was. And I just walked around the blocks, taking the sweater off, and went right back on the bus and got on it for an hour to head back.
So a lot of the rebelling was a lot of like just kind of testing these boundaries and testing these kinds of rules for life.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like I would also like we would sing prayers out loud, and instead of using God's name, which is Adonai with the N sound, I would say Adogai with the G sound. And like a lot of it was just testing these boundaries, seeing if what would happen, if lightning would strike down, if I would die, if somebody would die, something like that.
And so did that progress as time went on? Like we got further away from what the rule system was?
I think at a certain point, I just stopped caring. I think it was after I got kicked out is when I stopped caring. I think I just completely didn't have time to waste. But I do remember, like, the first time that I went, I was alone with a guy. I remember, like, we were standing close to each other, and like he leaned down to kiss me, and I gave him my forehead. Like, I was very uncomfortable in any kind of interaction with the opposite sex. But it was, I think as soon as I was kicked out, everything just kind of left, and I just didn't care much about testing things out anymore.
Tell me more about that. I guess what else kind of went out the window with that kind of like, well, the rules don't matter too much anymore. What else went with that?
So I think there was a lot of, that's a good question. I think before that, I had only seen myself starting a life with a Jewish person because I was still trying to maintain that relationship with my mom. After that, I know that didn't matter anymore. The food, making sure to eat kosher food, that didn't matter anymore to me. I think I was just more comfortable with myself. However, one thing I do struggle with still is I cannot shake a man's hand. So I will do everything, no matter what the situation is, no matter how professional the situation is. I will do anything to get out of shaking a man's hand because I am still very uncomfortable with that, even though it's been 7 years since I left.
Sure. And I mean, and no problems with being patient with yourself on things. I feel like that makes sense. So you're in this position where mom gives you 48 hours, right? And so did she also cut contact at that 48 hours? Did other people cut contact? Like, how did that dynamic change?
Not really. So with those 48 hours, within those 48 hours, I pretty much lost everyone overnight because nobody knew that I was thinking about leaving. So pretty much at that point, I had lost everyone because everybody found out that I was leaving. The one person that I did not lose, well, there were two people I didn't lose. One of the people is my best friend from high school. Her mom did not grow up religious. Her mom chose to become religious. So for her, she doesn't tie a human's character into how religious they are. However, everyone else did. And then the second person was my older sister. So my older sister was told by rabbis that she can't have any contact with me unless she was actively trying to bring me back within the community. So first, that's what she tried to do. She called me up and asked me if I would learn on the phone with her every week about the Torah and stuff like that. And I told her I wouldn't. Then she tried to offer me money to do it, and I told her no. And then she just decided to not listen to the rabbis. And that was the first time that she ever didn't listen to the rabbis. And I only found out about that a couple of months ago. And
Wow.
I'm just floored. And I think it's crazy. Like, I feel very lucky that she made that decision, because nobody else in my life did.
Right.
So I think that just says a lot about her. She's an amazing person.
Yeah.
The fact
Clearly.
that she did not listen to her rabbis in that scenario.
And what did that mean to you to have, I mean, because for everybody to leave overnight, what is it like to have at least that one person there?
It meant a lot, because I think I didn't realize what was going on her end. Like, I thought we were just maintaining this relationship, and our relationship got a whole lot better. And I found out later it was because she felt uncomfortable having a relationship with me because she knew I kept putting on this facade. And then as soon as I had decided to leave, she saw that facade drop, and then she felt like she can become close. She was able to become close to me. But for me, it was great, and it was also difficult, because it was great in the sense that I still felt family was there, but it was difficult in the sense that I thought every move I would make would cause them to drop me like everyone else. Now, looking back, I realized that showed me what unconditional love is, what actual love is, and what family is. However, at that point, I think I was just terrified that any move I would make would cause them to just leave overnight as well.
Right. Because, I mean, then that's everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's how it was at that point.
Yeah. And it makes sense that, I mean, just thinking about things, you know, logically, if she's from the same community that, you know, rejected you all at once, the fact that she is still holding on connection, you know, I would have to imagine in a sense, still represents part of that community. And so we may still be kind of thinking about her that way. That just kind of.
Kind of. So, currently not really.
Sure.
However, at that point, it was still, yeah, she still somewhat represented that community, and it was still kind of a surface level relationship while she was still in it. Even though we did get to know each other on a deeper level, it was still somewhat surface level, because she was hearing things from within the community. Like, for example, when I moved out of my mom's house, I was still working at the Jewish workplace, but I was living about an hour away. So every morning I would walk, and the straight walk to my work, from my apartment to my work, passed by the neighborhood where I grew up in, and where all of the people all families that were my neighbors and close friends lived on that block. So every day I would purposely, because when I was walking outside, especially in the heat, I wore short sleeves. So every day I would purposely walk about 20 minutes to avoid that area where family lived, so that it wouldn't seem as though I was rubbing it in their face. However, once I was running late, and I walked straight past that neighborhood, and the entire community was talking about it within minutes. The fact that I rubbed it in their face, the fact that I purposely walked down that block and purposely decided to show them that I wasn't religious. She was still hearing all that and wouldn't like confront me directly about it because she thought I was doing it out of anger and out of rebelliousness. And so there was, I apologize for the ripping sounds. Give me 1 second.
It's okay.
So there was still that level of superficialness, if that makes sense, in our relationship. Right. But it was definitely amazing to have someone that wasn't just dropping me for no reason.
Right. And I wonder, I mean, in losing that community, because that community, you know, when I have to imagine when you're in a group mentality like that, you know, you represent more so a part of the group than, you know, that is like a very, very big part of your identity. And so how did your identity shift, you know, when everybody cuts you off, you get that 48 hours?
I think it shifted by me just finding other things to focus my life on. Like I would become whoever I was in a relationship with. I would become exactly what they wanted. I would forge these relationships where the person told me what they needed and I would become that person. And I think I used that to create my identity, and I used them as part of my identity. Now I think, though, currently the way I think I'm still in the process of figuring out how to connect my past identity to my current identity and figuring out how my current identity and who I am now correlates with my past. Like my past is still a part of me, but it is not who I am now. And I think I'm still trying to figure out who I am as a person right now. It's still something I'm working through, I think.
Sure, trying to integrate, you know, all of you into all of you.
Right, exactly. Like, to be honest, most of the time, even though I do focus a lot on this on TikTok, most of the time I spend isn't really thinking about this as much. But as soon as I think about it, I realize that there's still so much that I have to work through and have to actually challenge until I figure out my full identity.
Naturally. I mean, that's a long time to have to come to terms with, and you know that's I feel like that is very understandable. So one of the things, I know we've had people on before who have escaped various various communities. I know we had Mary Byler on not too long ago, and she was talking about escaping her Amish community, and we talked about how we as the society outside of this community, what we should be aware of, what we can help out with, how, you know, how can we help individuals who are cut off from everybody else? What, if anything, can be done there?
I think the biggest thing that can be done is providing a safe space and also giving people grace with the outside world and while they're unlearning things. It took a long time. Like, there were a lot of beliefs that I held growing up that were racist, that were hateful. And that time while I was unlearning, thankfully my roommates were patient with me and were helping me and educating me. But had they not been, I probably would have dug my heel. Had they just been angry, I probably would have dug my heels in with those racist beliefs, with those hateful ideologies. And I'm happy that they took that time to teach that to me at 19 years old. Like, these are stuff that most people would know. I think also as a society, I don't know that there is much to do. I think more the communities within
Mm.
need something to systematically change. And I would say when people are thinking about leaving, they should not tell anyone within that they are going to leave until they are ready to leave, and they should be prepared to have everyone cut them off.
Mm.
And that I think was the biggest shock for me, because I thought I was maintaining a relationship with my mom, and having everyone cut me off was a shock. But had I been prepared for that and had I left when I was 16,
Mm.
I feel like I would have felt more in control of that situation.
Mm.
And I think people need to be aware of that and realize that even that they are going to lose every relationship, at least most relationships, when
Mm.
they do leave.
Mm. Which I imagine is a big thing that can probably keep people in a relationship like that. You know, it's. I mean, I think too, like when I work with people on like abusive relationships or very toxic relationships, it has so many echoes of that. You know, I am the only support system you have. I'm the only economic support that you have. I am, I am everything,
Mm-hmm.
and that is just so difficult to get apart from.
Right. And I do know that some people who leave end up going to domestic violence shelters, to
Mm.
DV shelters, because it is a very similar situation where they have no one in the outside world, and a lot of people have zero skills.
Mm.
If they do have college, it's the degrees are in um, philosophy,
Mm.
because it's all in religion. So they aren't helpful degrees, and they don't have enough experience that would actually help them in the outside world. Like, I am very glad that I left at 19,
Mm.
and not when I was older, and not when I had kids, and not when I was married. But for people who leave at an older age, it just gets harder as the years go on. Because you get more ingrained and more intertwined into the whole community.
Mm. Right. Right. It becomes more of you.
Right. And I would say, like, the first thing that hit me when I left. So when I was at the risk of being homeless, I think that was the first time it hit me that I was going to be alone and that I was no longer a part of the community. Because even in the community, yes, there are people who are poor. However, no one is homeless, because the community will raise money to help you pay your rent, to help you pay for groceries. They will deliver groceries to you. Everybody will chip in and help you. So yes, there's some financial worry, but you're
Mm.
never actually fully worried, because you know the community will get you that money.
Right.
But when it came to finding a place on my own, that real fear of sleeping on the streets and having to figuring out how much a Planet Fitness membership was, so I could
Mm.
shower there, and where I would keep my clothes while I'm at work, and just different things like that, that made me realize, I think, how alone I was and how
Mm.
much I relied on that support from community for everything.
Right. When you're facing that moment of real dire need.
Yeah, exactly. And you realize that a lot of that safety that you didn't even know that you got
Mm-hmm.
from the community was just gone. And the community, I feel like it also was an experience of realizing the community didn't value me as a person. They only valued me as an addition to the community, and kind of as they only valued me if I would also like procreate within the community
Mm-hmm.
and keep the community going for another generation.
Mm-hmm.
But me as a person did not have value, because as soon as I left, they didn't care whether I was dead or alive on the streets or anything. That I feel like was a real shocker moment
Mm.
for me.
Mm. Right.
Yeah.
And like you said, that is such a moment of, I would have to guess, just feeling truly alone at that point.
Yeah, which is why I think I just dove into the 3 jobs and then dove into relationships after relationships
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't like that feeling. I
Right.
was just like, nah, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
get that. So yeah, it was a moment. However, I was still feeling at that point. Like I actually a couple of weeks ago, I found a letter that I wrote to my mom because as soon as I started in the first long-term relationship, when I started dating
Mm-hmm.
someone who wasn't Jewish, she took me in front of a rabbi and then um, mourned my death, went through a process called sitting Shiva, what Jews do when somebody dies. So she mourned my death because I was dating someone not Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And after she had done that, I wrote a letter, apologizing to her and, begging her to see things from my view. And I think for a long time, I still thought that I was in the wrong,
Mm-hmm.
even when I came to these realizations, it still felt like I was wrong for leaving the way I grew up.
Mm. Right. That I guess blast from the past continues too. You always got that voice in the back
Yeah.
of your head continuing to kind of knock on things.
Right, exactly.
With that, and please, if this is a personal question, please, you no need to answer. But I guess when I think about just again relating this to the toxic relationships that I sometimes work with, sometimes that need and the emotional need, the social need, the economic need does cause people to second guess the decision that they made. Did that ever occur for you? Like, was there a moment where you were like kind of ambivalent about the fact that you'd left?
Yeah, that happens actually like every once in a while. And the last time it happened was when I found that letter a couple of weeks ago to my mom because as I mentioned before, I have a younger sister. When I left, she was 4 years old. She's now 11 years
Mm-hmm.
old. The idea that she is growing up in that community alone and the fact that she thinks that, I abandoned her to just wear pants and like I abandoned her just because I wanted to wear pants is what like she's being told.
Mm.
And that concept that I would even put that in front of her, it just it makes me often think I should go back and tough it out for a few more years until she's at least 16 or 18 so I can have a relationship with her. That is something I still struggle with, and I think I'll probably struggle with until she's 16 or 18.
Mm-hmm.
And then if she doesn't reach out at that point, I'm probably gonna just be regretting that I didn't go back. But I also know for my mental health, like once I had made the decision to leave and I was still in it and I wasn't leaving, my mental health really did decline because there was that cognitive
Mm-hmm.
dissonance of feeling controlled and doing these rules that I didn't feel like they had any meaning anymore. And I felt like I was just drowning in all of that. So I know for my mental health, it would not be the best if I went back in,
Mm-hmm.
but I often toy with the idea of going back to be there for her while she's growing up so she doesn't think that her sister just abandoned her there to
Mm-hmm.
grow up in that community alone.
Right. There's that caring side of you that wants to I guess put her over you for the moment. You think about her a lot.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And like the fact that she's a child, I'm an adult,
Right.
you know, and she's having to go through this. I should have the ability to go through it with her as
Mm.
well. And she should have somebody there who understands. But yeah, so that's still something I struggle with.
Understandable.
Um, yeah.
That's completely understandable. I mean, that it makes sense why there'd be a lot of turmoil with that. Um, what is it, I guess, that keeps you here?
I think it's the understanding that if I would go back, my mental health would take such a decline because, again, the rules aren't it's not just general rules of having to wear long sleeves and wear a skirt. The rules are so detailed and so extreme, and the repercussions for not doing these rules are they're so extreme. They're supposed to be so extreme. I think my mental health would take such a decline that I wouldn't be around when she was 18, and I'd rather be around when she gets older than suffering with her and then not being around when she gets older.
Right.
That's a real fear of mine. And I think that's what's keeping me out. The fact that, yeah, I want to be around when she's 18 and when she's older.
Right. Right. I can appreciate that perspective. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I guess as we begin to conclude here today, one of the last questions I did want to ask you, I've seen your video, so I know the answer, but for the listener's sake, I wonder, are you still religious at this point?
No, at this point, I'm not religious at all. There isn't really anything I keep. As I mentioned before, I don't really concern myself because there are so many religions out there in the world. I don't think I can pick one and say this one is right and everything else is wrong. However, the one thing that I still, connect to is with my dad. So my dad passed when I was in the 8th grade, and he was religious when he passed. So on the Hebrew anniversary of his passing, I do light a memorial candle and I do go out and help feed, because he was somebody who, like, our house was always open for everybody. So every year I go out and have dinner with an unhoused person and then get them into a hotel for the night. This year with the platform that I currently have, I am trying to help as many people as I could. And so far we got up to slightly over $300, where we'll be able to help 3 people sleep somewhere warmly for the night and have some extra walking around money afterwards, which I think would be such an amazing thing, because during his lifetime, he was an addict, and it's a lot of people on the streets are addicts. And I feel like that little bit of reprieve from staying out in the cold really does help them, and can hopefully just brighten someone's day in his honor.
Yeah, that is an amazing cause. So, if people want to, I guess, give to the cause, is there any way that they can do that?
Yeah, so on my TikTok, there is a link in my bio that has my Cash App and my Venmo. They can also donate just gifts on my TikTok live. I go live pretty much every evening. But the best way, I think, would be through my Venmo or my Cash App, which is linked in my bio. I think those are the best ways, and I'm really thankful for everybody who has donated, because every year I would just help one person, and the fact that this year I can help 3 people is just shocking to me. And like, I already did a whole Pride Fest about it, but I'm really thankful to everybody who has helped me get to this point already.
I mean, it's an amazing cause, and I think it's incredible. So I would definitely encourage everybody to go check that out, donate if you can. And your TikTok is BOZETTEXX, correct?
Yes, like Bozos and Bozettes.
Okay.
And then because Bozette wasn't available, I added the XX. But I used to call people bozos and bozettes. And that's kind of, again, I did not expect this platform to actually grow and for people to actually find it. So kind of just happened as a childhood nickname and then became something.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I love the work that you do. I am very, very thankful that you decided to spend this time with us today, sharing your story and just talking with us in general. So yeah, Fay, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you for everything. It was so great talking to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody who is listening at home, whether live on TikTok or YouTube or on the podcast later on. Thank you so much. My name is Rob. This has been the Please Stay Inside podcast. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Bye.